So we have our last presentation now, which I think is someone that I wanted to ask to close the session because when I met her in Tokyo, she was primarily working as a futurist, which is, of course, our intuitive work also. And since then, she's been writing books, doing many, many public talks. There's a TED talk that I'll share the link to for you as well. And so I'd like to invite KRISTINA DRYZ to be our closing speaker for today. Hi, KRISTINA. And she's going to be speaking about hope in relation to wisdom and ancestral knowledge and place. And I think it's a very fitting follow-up to Jeannie's presentation too. So thank you, KRISTINA.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. And when I was thinking about what to speak about, I titled it A Mythic Way to Hold Hope, The Last Light. So hello, and thank you again for inviting me into this gathering. As Philip said, my name is KRISTINA, and we actually come from the same hometown, which is Adelaide. So I also pay my deep respect to the Kaurna people and also to my own Lithuanian ancestry, which I literally just honored by being one of the leaders of the Lithuanian Australian Scouts camp this weekend. So I just returned to the city a few hours ago, got all the dust and everything off me, and I'm really joyous to be with you here now. So I work with archetypes and myths, which is really a poetic way of saying I help people listen more deeply to the invisible patterns shaping their lives. I work with individuals and companies curious about their own mythic map, their archetypes, their soul story, through archetypal readings that help people reconnect with the deeper threads of who they truly are. I work with what's beneath the surface, what lives in our bones and our dreams, what we carry, often unconsciously, from ancestors and culture, from the collective stories that we are all deeply swimming in. Though today, of course, I want to focus and speak about hope. Not the kind you find in Pinterest quotes, not the fluffy version, not the just stay positive, only good vibes image quotes that are rampant on social media. I want to speak about mythic hope, the kind that knows darkness, the kind that knows darkness. And this is the kind that will walk with you through your grief, the kind that survives despair and keeps walking. That is the hope that I want to be speaking about. So let's start with a story that you might know, but maybe not quite like this. In one of the earliest myths of the Western world, Pandora is gifted a sealed jar by the gods. She's told never to open it, but curiosity, a divine feminine force, moves her. She opens the jar. Out flies every affliction imaginable: war, hunger, betrayal, greed, illness, death. But one thing stays behind: hope. Hope doesn't escape. Hope doesn't run. Hope remains. Now, for thousands of years, philosophers have argued, well, what does this actually mean? Like, was it like the gods' final cruelty to, leave hope trapped? Or was it their hidden kindness to keep hope safe? To me, this myth says something really deeply sacred. Hope stays because they, it, or maybe she, knows we'll need her. Hope stays with us in the jar of suffering, not as a fix, but as a flicker. The last light, the one thing we are never without. So why speak about myth at this conference? And as Philip said, I usually do call myself an ex-futurist, which is a funny kind of moniker to kind of say, but now obviously with my love of archetypes and mythology, which is more of my work. But it's getting, and I think Philip will put my TEDx in the comments, but we've been brought up in our Western culture to see myth being a lie. Or we might also say myth, it's too much like fantasy, but it is not lies, and it's not just solely entertainment. Myth is truth told on a slant through the symbolic language of the soul. And whenever we start a story with once upon a time, what we're actually really saying is once upon a now. It is present continuous. This is not something that happened in the past. It is actually occurring right now. And archetypes are the recurring patterns within these ancient stories. The sage, the orphan, the lover, the trickster, the alchemist. They show us how we survive, how we love, how we fall, how we rise, how we grieve, and actually how we rebuild too. And archetypes, they're not just the characters in the stories. They're actually forces of nature that live inside us all. And each one actually has its own way of carrying hope. So let's look at a few. So in the myth of Demeter and Persephone, when Persephone is stolen to the underworld, and in a way, because we so rarely consciously descend to the underworld, we have actually turned our upper world into the underworld. So when Persephone is stolen to the underworld, Demeter searches the earth for her daughter. She brings winter, she brings famine, the devastation of devastating losses, but she never stops. Even in her grief, she refuses to give up. Now, her hope doesn't look pretty. It's not pretty tears. It's raw, it is furious, it is rageful, it is grieving, but it is active. In the Odyssey, if we want to know that story, and I'm sure those of you that follow popular culture will be eagerly awaiting Christopher Nolan's version of the Odyssey, his most expensive film to date to come out. If you read this classic, you will know that Odysseus survives shipwreck, betrayal, monsters, exile. For 20 years, he longs for home. What keeps him going? It's not certainty. It's not positive thinking. It's not picture quotes. It's actually a mythic form of hope. The bone deep knowing that some part of him still belongs to a future he hasn't seen yet. Even in Indigenous dreaming stories across Australia, hope is not a fix. Hope is about relationships. Relationships with the ancestors, relationships with the land, and the relationships with spirit. Hope in these stories is not found outside of despair, but rather it moves through it. And that is the power of myth. It does not deny the dark. It teaches us how to walk through it with meaning. So in the work that I do with individuals and companies, I'm very interested in helping them hold a mythic posture. Now, I'm sure some of you are even thinking, what does that mean? And even just hearing the posture, I hope like you, I just went, oh, where's my posture? Got some books on my head there. And what is a mythic posture, you know? It means that you see your life as part of a much larger pattern. It means stepping out of the frantic now and into deep time, the timeless river of humanity, ancestry, psyche, and cosmos. It means remembering that you're not just this isolated self, but a thread in a greater weaving. Holding a mythic posture isn't about pretending that everything's fine. It's about standing, even with shaking knees and all the dysregulated nervous systems that we all have, standing inside the knowledge that the soul survives these long, dark nights. So in this way, hope and a mythic posture is less about answers and more about alignment and attunement. And alignment and attunement to the invisible, to the sacred, and to the parts of you that are older than this current pain. So how do different archetypes carry hope? Well, we could say that the lover carries hope by choosing connection, even when they've been hurt. The sovereign holds a longer vision, and so they can actually still lead with integrity, even when the future is uncertain. The magician carries hope through imagination, through the ability to envision something that does not yet exist. That is where the magician's hope lies. The warrior carries hope through action, even when they're wounded. They rise because the fight still matters. The orphan, perhaps most poignantly, carries hope by believing that love is still possible, even after abandonment, especially after abandonment. and the wanderer. The wanderer carries hope by trusting the unknown. Each archetype shows us how to meet despair and desolation in a very different manner. And sometimes we need to let these archetypal energies take turns in their dominance. It's crucial to let the lover rest so the warrior can rise. Or just as equally important for the magician to imagine something new. But what about the moments when hope doesn't feel so easily accessible? What is it when you can't feel it, can't find it, when no words can touch the core of you, when the grief is too heavy, or the night, or we could even say the election cycle, too long? Myth teaches us you do not have to feel hopeful to keep going, and that what gets you through the night might not actually be a spark of light. It might be rhythm, it might be breath, it might be a memory, or it might be your ancestors whispering, we have been here too. So important to also remember that you don't have to see the dawn. You only have to keep walking east. And this is where ritual really matters. This is where story becomes medicine. This is where the myths remind you, you are not alone in this pain. You are part of a lineage of souls who kept going even when they couldn't see the end. Hope in this light, it isn't a mood. It's not a, it's a mood. It's a muscle. It's not about feeling better either. It's not this quick fix. It's about remaining in relationship with what you love, to stay in relationship with what matters, and to what is sacred. So for some of you on this call, hope might sound like a prayer. To others, it is a guttural scream. And for others, silence. But the fact that you're still here, listening, breathing, well, I don't know what to say, but to me, that's hope embodied. And what about Australia? What does mythic hope look like here? Well, as most of the presentations today have touched on, we are standing on some of the most ancient land on earth, a place where stories have been sung for over 60,000 years, where hope has survived colonization, dispossession, destruction, and still lives on in songlines, in resistance, in reverence. To hope here is not to bypass the truth of our history. It is to honor the courage of First Nations people, to listen more deeply, to build mythic bridges between worlds. Hope in Australia means remembering that the land is alive, that we are guests, and that we still have time to tend the future with care. So this is what I want to leave you with. Hope is not something you get. It's rather something you remember, because it lives in the oldest stories. It speaks in the language of archetype and soul. And when we feel disconnected, the greater stories of what it means to be a human being, encapsulated in the form of these myths and archetypal characters and forces, can indeed bring us back to ourselves and to hope. Because when we know our story, we know how to walk it, even through the dark, especially through the dark. And we also remember that hope was never, ever, ever outside of the jar. It was inside us all along. Thank you.
Wow, KRISTINA. This is, we'll keep this speech for future get-togethers, I'm sure, because it gives, I would say, roots to our hope form. It's really important.